I'm Lalita Nagarajan from the Avaz team, and we are happy to have you all join us for kickstarting this new series of AAC talks by speech therapists and who have been in the AAC field and who are sharing their experiences. So, introducing Bhargavi Raman. Thank you, Bhargavi, for joining us. Bhargavi is a very passionate and dedicated SLP who has done her master's in speech language pathology. She's also certified by the RCI and is also an Avaz certified AAC professional who has done the course with us. And she has a private practice in Chennai and is also a consultant at Rainbow Children's Hospital at Guindy and at Mungambakam. So yeah, over to you, Bhargavi, and we look forward to a very engaging and interactive session.
Yeah, so the topic is empowering communication and how AAC reduces the stress to speak and enhances communication. The objective is, one is to whatever stigma or the thought process that AAC reduces or limits a child to speak. I think we are going to talk a little opposite on that, and that's how I would go. Yeah. So this is going to be the roadmap for today's presentation. So we would start with what is AAC, because we also have parents and general public who have not yet, who don't know what AAC is. So we will start with what is argumentative and alternative form of communication, what are the significance, what benefits it creates, and a little perspective shift to use AAC effectively. And then we will dive into our own children who are using AAC effectively, and then the Q&A session. Yeah. So what is AAC? AAC refers to argumentative and alternative mode of communication, and it refers to all ways that someone can communicate besides talking. So the closest example I can take is in everybody's life right now is WhatsApp. So WhatsApp is also some form of AAC for all of us, because we are communicating what we are thinking, but we are not doing that using speech. So what are the types of AAC? It can range from no technology to low technology to high technology. Examples of no technology can be using gestures. So right now I'm using my hands, I'm using, some level of pointing. So that is using AAC to communicate without any technology. And then we have low technology that could be, even like I have a small daughter, like she's 18 months old. And if I ask her, where is her, so she will point to her photo. So that pointing is somewhere low technology. So anything in photo, anything in flashcards, all of that. And high technology is, of course, a system which has a vocabulary in them. Yeah, so AAC system means all of these systems that a person uses. I will show you what an AAC system is after this slide. So before that, we'll talk about why is AAC so important. And without our knowledge, all of us have been using some level of AAC at some point of our lives. So it is important because it enables effective communication. Now, again, the closest example I can think of when I would use texting over speaking is probably when I am emotionally heightened. Like, for example, I had a fight with my husband. I don't want to talk to him on phone, or I don't want to talk in person because it creates an uncomfortable conversation. So then I'm going to text. So this enables me to have an effective communication. What that does is it expresses my thoughts, it promotes my communication, it supports integration as well. And when I say it enhances participation and, so it enhances participation and inclusion. Again, the closest example I can give about that from my life is, say I am in a professional circle and I don't get to express my thoughts to someone, probably because we didn't have time, probably because it took time for me to process the information someone professionally told me. So over there, I'm going to choose a mail. I'm going to, put down my thoughts and, send it across. So So what that gives me is, it supports my personal development. So when I do these things, like I am having an uncomfortable thought process, but I still decide to text and convey that message. When I didn't get time to say something, but I still decide to feel included by doing it through mail. It gives me encouragement, it gives me a cognitive growth, and it also gives me a way to express myself. So as a result, I'm going to feel good about myself in the end. So this is the significance of AAC. Now, how can this significance be given to a child who is not yet a very complex technology user? So this is the system what Avaz has. So here, if you see, there are a lot of boxes, and inside each box you have more vocabulary. So all we do is as we speak, we type. So we don't. So the thought process here is not that the child has to directly start communicating through this device. The thought process here is how efficient an adult is to communicate from this device. Like, for example, if I have to teach a 3-year-old child to use, say, the same WhatsApp, then I am going to the best way the child is going to learn that is me extensively using it. So it's the same principle over here also. So what happens is, according to Corner et al., the experience and advocacy of speaking autistic adults who use AAC part-time demonstrates that AAC may be a valuable tool for autistic children who speak. Now, why is it that he said like this? Why is it that AAC is a valuable tool? That's probably because there is a lot of anxiety or stress to communicate, which just goes unnoticed by a lot of people. So according to few studies, there are heightened levels of anxiety due to difficulty in expressing their thoughts. There is a significant correlation between communicative difficulties and social isolation and lower self-esteem. And how is that? For us to understand this, I would want us to understand how the stress to speak in typical and atypical brains differ. And for us to understand this stress, we will have to be on the same page when I say typical and atypical brain. So I'm going to talk a little bit about something which is common between both of us, that is the speech and language development. And I am going to talk about what is a language development and what is a speech development, which I love doing otherwise also because I am a speech language pathologist. So, see, language development is anything what a child understands from day one of life. So, for example, a 3-month-old child will understand if I cry, I will be fed. So that is part of language development. A 6-month-old child will understand that I don't have to cry only for hunger. I can cry for pain. I can cry for my mom. So that is a part of language development. So whatever a child understands from the outside world, for simpler terms, we can call it as a language development. And this keeps happening at 1 year, at 2 years, at say, so a 1-year child will understand one word, like what is a bottle, what is who is mommy, who is appa. At 2 years, they start having better understanding. So when they want to go out, they'll say go buy. When they want something more, they'll be like give me more. By 3 years, they'll start asking more questions like where is daddy? So they start understanding non-existence. By 4 years, they start reasoning. So they're like, why are you taking me to the hospital? Why are you taking me here? So they'll ask a lot of why. So this process from how a child cried only to communicate to asking questions to understanding more and more things is what is called language development. Parallelly, we have something called speech development, where now the child has understood this is pen, this is mom, this is dad. Now this brain has all the information. This brain has to send signals to your muscles saying that you need to make this particular movement to express to to express to the outside world that this is what I have understood. So this movement, motor planning and programming is what is called speech development, and a 6-month-old child will plan at a level of babbling versus a 4-month-old child will plan at a level of, story narration and asking questions and all of that. So this particular thing, what I told you, that there is a specific language development and specific speech development. This is what we typically see, which is called typical development. Okay, so where is this typical development coming from? Is possibly from a typical cognitive skill. So this typical cognitive skill is coming from a typical brain. So this is what I call it as typical brain. Now, when we say that a child did not have a typical development, we are calling it atypical. Now, atypical does not mean abnormal, because when you say that if
1
there
minute.
is
Bhargavi, I'm sorry. Bhumi has said, can you go a little slow? So Bhumi, is there something specific you want to be addressed? I mean, she is going at the basics, from the basics. And if there is something specific you are looking for, is it the speed of narration or is it just the topic? Okay, you can carry on. And if I get a response, I'll let you know. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go a little slow. Yeah. So yeah, so with this, so when we say typical and atypical, we are also concluding that it is not necessary that all brains needs to be same. There can be a set of typical development, and there can be different sets of different atypical developments as well. So this is what we are concluding. But so this has happened because of a lot of autistic individuals, like when at my age, people who had struggles with autism, and every typical community tried to make it normal, which was not needed. They made us realize that brains can be different and it is okay. So I think the basis of the presentation, why AAC also needs to be normalized, is on this front, saying that there can be, we don't need to have a presumption that all brains are same. When we go by the thought process that all brains can be different, then these brains can also communicate differently, and there is no less or more in this. Okay, so I hope people have understood what I mean, what people mean when we say typical and atypical brains. So how do we exhibit stress? So typical brains, we have seen, like we see that when they are stressed, we know when someone is stressed while speaking. Like probably right now I'm a little stressed because it's a talk and I don't know a lot of people. So some people might tap their foot, some people might argue verbally, like when there is anxiety. So these are the typical way we see stress coming out while communicating. What if in these typical brains, so when we say that the speech and language development didn't happen typically, it is happening a little differently. It's possibly because these brains perceive the life very differently than these typical brains. So as simple as I'm wearing a dress and I get a tag, and that gives me a sensory overload. Or someone is talking and then I find that rate of speech to be too fast, while others are able to perceive it. Or by the time a person asks me a question, I am taking more time to process the information, but before I answer, this person is probing me to say it. So these could be one of those typical one of those ways where anxiety can shoot up while communicating. So what do we do about it? What do? We start with very early intervention, and we start with strength-based approach, and we work on holistic approach. So what is holistic approach? We show the child that all forms of communication are respected and accepted. So why early intervention is, again, in Tamil we have a very nice quote saying that Anjal Valayadadu Aimbadil Valayma. So if a child is not understanding about themselves at 5 years, for them to understand that 50 years is going to be difficult. And that's what the autistic community has also given us a lot of research about as well. So this is an example of introducing strength-based approach in one of our child. What is 5 plus 5? 10. 10. And look for this again. Okay, then you have to speak. 10. Good. 9. Adrit, what is here? 2 plus 2? 10. Here. 2 plus 2. 2. Down. Adrit, what is 2 plus 2, Adrit? 5. 4. 4. Again, write it down. 2 plus 2? 8. 8 plus 2? 8. Plus 2. Down. What is 8 plus 2? 10. Take down to 10. 10. Okay, then what is 7 plus 3? Okay. So this is a child. I would just want to tell a little bit about this child. So this is a child with severe motor planning difficulty. So like I said, there are two things the brain does, to put it in simple terms. One is understanding, and then another is execution. So execution, everything, like right from pointing, right from bowling, everything is execution. So imagine like your brain knows everything, like your brain knows the simple addition, your brain knows what is greeting, your brain knows what to say, but your brain does not know how to do it. So that is what the child has. So now if we kept waiting for this child to speak, we would be missing what I call the strength-based approach, where the child has so many strengths. The child is cognitively good, the child comprehends well, he is pragmatically functional, he is communicatively functional. The only weakness is, or the only challenge the child has, is this execution difficulty. So how is it that we can show the child that these are your strengths, you continue working on these, and through this can you leverage your weaknesses or challenges, is by doing this. So we knew he was good at maths because the parents also said he does well. So with that, we started off with AAC, and it's been a very brief number of sessions with AAC, but still we can see a very good reduction in anxiety and improvements in his self-acceptance. So yeah, like I said, these are the benefits. So so one of the thing is, if you start off alternative form of communication to a child, you're going to see more appropriate behaviors. That's for the simple reason that for the child, you are conveying a message that communication is the child's right, which you are giving, and speech is a skill. Let the child acquire it as they are getting into that developmental phase. And as a result, the child starts accepting themselves more, again, because of which you will see a reduction in behavior. And they'll also be have a reduction in anxiety, which I'll be talking about in the next slide. So this is before we started AAC for a 5-year-old child who had delay in speech and language skills. But again, he had his strengths. We knew he was using communication. He was using cry and a lot of inappropriate behaviors to communicate. So then we started off with AAC with the parents' acceptance, and now he is a happy child. Like we are so happy to see him happy. Thank you.
Wipe பண்ணிடு யா என்ன பண்ண யா என்ன wet யா என்ன ஆயிடுச்சு hands wet hands யா hands wet ஆயிடுச்சு check பண்ணு பப்பிக்கு check அப்புறம் அப்புறம் என்ன போடலாம் பப்பிக்கு இன்ஜெக்ஷன் போட்டுட்டு பப்பிக்கு இன்ஜெக்ஷன் போட்டு பப்பி இன்ஜெக்ஷன்
So I think we can see from there was so much in his mind that he wanted to communicate, and he is happy learning about it. He is happy learning about descriptors, and he is happy to connect with the clinician. So yeah. So this is just a self-explanatory theory which I created for myself, which I would like to share. But it also has a lot of research on the psychological aspect as well. So I think desire to speak and desire to communicate comes from the experiences from the environment. So the more positive experiences we as adults can provide to every child, irrespective of, we don't even have to get into a diagnosis. You don't even have to be a clinician for that matter. If you can show every child that communication is their right, and let speech happen when it has to happen. So how can you do that is like, for small example, experiences from the environment mean say you ask a child, show me apple, and the child shows apple, and then immediately what few of the parents, or most of the parents would do is, can you say apple, say apple. So that's what we are trying to do. So what is that going to create is, it's going to create an anxiety. So if a child has the innate skill to naturally say apple, the child would have said it even before you ask the question, for that matter. So if the child is finding the struggle, then possibly because that is the child's challenge. So instead of you seeing the strength, you are only seeing the challenges. In return, you're showing the child that it's the challenges which matters. So what is this going to create? This is not going to create a learning mode. Learning mode is, I have these strengths, let me connection. You guys can hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes,
we can
please.
hear.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Yeah, so learning mode is this particular thing, like introspecting that these are my strengths, let me go to my challenges. So if we don't allow the child to introspect, we are not creating a learning mode in the child. We are constantly creating only the survival mode, that is flight or fight mode. And in the flight or fight mode, the child is going to show a lot of behaviors. So when we don't create a learning mode, like how the arrow goes up, up and up, we are creating more self-acceptance, we are creating more emotional development. In return, we are creating a desire to speak. So if speech has to come, it will come. That's where I'll go to the next one. So what I am trying to say is, the perspective to use AAC in children needs a kind of a paradigm shift, a perspective shift, because we need to understand that for a long time, we have assumed that physical development and emotional development are equal. But there are enough research now, and we know that physical development is linear, but emotional development might not be linear. So physical development, you have growth spurts, you have height gain, you have weight gain, and then it just goes on. But emotional development needs a lot of who is emotionally developed is someone who is sitting for a longer period of time in the learning mode. And how can we do that with young children is through communication. So communicative development is majorly dependent on the emotional development and not just physical development. So hence, there is no right age to start AAC, according to me. The earlier, the better, because we are showing a very respectful way for a child to learn communication that way. And one of the very important thing is, again, a perspective shift that I got is, for a long time, I used to feel stressed that I am a speech therapist and I am not able to get speech from a child. But I realized getting speech from a child is not a speech therapist's role. Like, if the child is emotionally evolved and the child is able to sit with me, practice with me, understand that speech is difficult for me, but still I would try with you, that is when I can ideally work with the child. But if the child has not reached this phase, then my role is to help parents and the community create the necessary environment for the child to communicate effectively first. So examples of children from our clinic who were being different but not less in any way. So this is a child I'm going to show you who is 3 years, female. She had differences in speech. She had differences in the sensory way of looking at life. So she had, so sensory is the commonest example I can give is, you will also drink coffee. I'll also drink coffee. For me, the coffee might be too hot, but for you, it would just be hot. So you would drink it, but I would wait for more time. So my sensory experience with that coffee is very different from your sensory experience from the coffee. So this is for, typically those two typical brains I'm talking about. So when we say amongst the typical community itself, the sensory differences are so much. What about a brain which completely processes information differently? So this child had, the parents' concern when they came to us was the child had inappropriate behaviors and the child used to cry to seek attention. So 1 month of strength-based approach, we worked on all forms of communication, and the child showed us as an act. I can put it in 2 lines that speech is difficult, but I am an expert in communication. What that means, strength, cognitively good, the child has sensory differences, but if we can have a trust-based relationship, the child can show that sensory form of learning is her mode of learning. So then challenge was, she found difficulty in planning the movement. Again, possibly because when I speak, I also get a lot of sensory feedback. So if a child who is processing life differently, she is not getting that same feedback, and that's going to frustrate the child even more. So outcome of 2nd month of therapy, the behaviors had reduced, and the child used a holistic approach. This is so here they are asking some reasoning questions. So when it rains, what will you take? She's able to answer. So she's able to achieve the WH questions. So this is another child, again, 3 years, differences in speech and language skills. She used to isolate herself when there was even a slightest change in her environment, and she was finding it difficult to trust us in the first month, like we could see that she wouldn't, so there was not very extreme behaviors, like there was not much expression of denial, but we could see that there was a lot of isolation from human interaction per se. So again, we worked on all forms of communication. The child showed speech is difficult, but I am an expert. So now the child is more calm, she's more happy, she's starting to use a lot of single words. And it is more than need based. So again, one of the thing, if you start AAC, and again, if you show the child that we respect you for who you are, that's the result of spontaneous communication to me. So if you go to therapy and whatever the child needs, the child is saying good, that's good. But if the child is saying more than need, like the child is attempting to communicate more things, that means the environment has created atmosphere where the child need not feel anxious, the child need not feel judged. Like even if she fails, it is okay. That's the environment the parents, the therapists, and the grandparents had created for her within 2 months, and that's like a huge transition. So she is again having a pretend play here where she is, the dog is ill and she is trying to, play with the dog and giving the dog the injection. Here, this is a very beautiful video where she spontaneously expresses saying, I am sick, I am hungry, I want to go. So that's very sweet. So that's exactly my thing. So it's not just about how much they can communicate, are they narrating. For her age, if that emotional awareness increases, the child is going to express spontaneously, and we just have to reciprocate that. So here she is showing, I feel sick, I feel angry, I feel hungry. So, and this was towards the end of the session. So she was like, leave me now, I need to go. So yeah, that, and if you want to see the other video, I can show that as well.
There's no audio from the video.
No, there's no audio here. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So she's just having a pretend play here where she is showing put medicine, stethoscope, and then she would also, so she is basically saying this, and after that she would also do it. I think we have a video of that also. So after what she showed, that put medicine, stethoscope, she would do that with the dog, the toy which she has. So that's her. And then we have come to almost the end of it. So this is a child who is opting AAC over speech.
E. By. Again, Pranav. By. E. Yes, again. Again. One more time, Pranav. By. By. Sound. By. Sound.
So this is just a video to show how the child opt to choose AAC over speech. And if you see his mouth, he attempted, but this is a child again who has autism, and he's 7 years now, but the speech is not as much as it should be, but that doesn't mean cognitively he cannot communicate. Like communication, like how Avaz says, and a lot of people say, communication can happen from day one of life, and it's just that we as adults need to give the child the right kind of environment. So Yeah.
Bye.
So these are few of our parents' feedback on using AAC and its impact on their quality of life. So conclusion, I think I kept reiterating the fact that communication is a child's right. Speech is a complex skill that they acquire from the environment. There should not be the pressure to speak, but rather way for the child to learn to speak. And when will I learn something if I am not good at it is when I know I am good at a lot of other things so that I can learn something which I am good at. So it's the same principle what we will need to take into account when it comes to how AAC can reduce anxiety to communicate as well. So it's those each moment where we decide how to respectfully, understand a child's communication. Yes, so we are open for discussion.
So here's a question from, thank you so much, Bhargavi. That was a very engaging session and very nice to hear your perspectives as well. Okay, so Shivam Kumar says, how to make such environments for the child so that my child can pay attention to what I'm teaching her on gadget or AAC.
So one of the, again, mindset shift I would want to give is, like I said, if I have to, let's go to something which we already know. If I have to teach a child WhatsApp, what do I do? Do I, or rather, if I want my child to learn to use WhatsApp effectively, what do I do? Do I teach the child this is WhatsApp, you'll need to open it, and will this work efficiently? Or if I start using it and my child sees it, and I think it's the same principle I would use with AAC also, and for the simple reason that, again, technology, for in general, as we all say, technology is not bad, it's how we use it that makes it, and AAC is per se, it's the most, like how someone can speak, it's someone who can use the technology. That's also so I think we'll need to model more appropriately, and your goal should not be to teach the child. Your goal should be for you to connect with the gadget so that your child learns this act of connecting with the gadget. And this is the goal per se for everything. Like even if you're playing with a toy, I think most of the people ask me, how is it that I can teach the child the vocabulary? And first, we have to connect with something, and this act is what the child needs to learn first. So the more we connect with the gadget, automatically the child will learn how to connect with the high-tech AAC.
Sure. Yeah. Sri Vidya says, is opting for AAC okay even if the child can speak? Will it discourage the child to use words?
No. So two things, like I showed one of the study which was done in 2023, it looks like even if anybody speaks, like, if, again, it's not, I don't know what is the age of the child or the adult, but if the person is neurodivergent, then opting it is only going to help them reduce anxiety, first thing. And second thing, can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Yeah, is AAC is opting for AAC okay even if the child can speak? Second question is, will it discourage the child to use words?
Right. Yeah. So regarding the second question, will it discourage? No, because two things. Speech, like I said, is very complex. Just because you and me have acquired it naturally, so we always underestimate it. It is one of the most complex neurophysiological skills humans acquire. So if it has to happen, it will happen. And if there are any struggles, then using AAC is only going to make it happen, like I said, because that person gets more self-aware. So no, it's not going to disrupt the speech process in any way.
And the earlier question that even if the child can speak, can they still use AAC? Can you address that also?
Yes, yeah. So like I said, yes, like I said, if we don't know if that child is neurotypical or neurodivergent, but if the child shows a behavior that I would want a combination of AAC and speaking, then I think yes, as an environment, we need to accept that, and not just in the homes, but also in other communities like schools and other places, because there is some struggle, and that's why the child is opting for it. So just we can respect that behavior. Yes.
Yeah, I would like to add one more thing, because we have seen cases where children, after using AAC, start developing speech, and there's an error that is made if you stop AAC at that point, because we find that some parents or some professionals have advised parents, okay, he's starting to speak, so then you stop AAC, he doesn't need it. But that's really not the case, because children who have communication difficulties at some point will surely need it, because like you said, when they are stressed, when they are emotionally stressed, they need an alternative form of communication. So please make sure that you don't remove it, because that will only increase behavior issues later. So yeah, that is okay. And next question is from Bhumi. Is AAC used only for non-verbal and minimally verbal children?
No, it can
No.
be like I said, I like that's what. So even for autistic adults who use AAC part-time, they demonstrate that AAC may be a valuable tool for anybody who speaks. So I think again, it's the same thing like you mentioned. And even in our children, we have seen like that child who is trying to communicate her emotions. She has got a spurt increase in vocabulary after we introduced AAC. So and again, that could be developmental. I'm not saying we should be giving the credit pure only to, but even if again, like I said, the role of speech therapist or the role of environment in bringing up a child is not to give them everything. If they have an innate quality to speak, they will speak. Meanwhile, if there is a delay for them to speak, ideally we expect a child at say 12 months to communicate. If the child is not communicating effectively using speaking at 12 or 18 months, this lag, and the child ends up talking at 3 years, this period, that anxiety that because of something I'm not able to speak is going to create more anxiety in the child. To avoid that, let's start using AAC is what we are trying to convey.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
any child who has a delay in speech, and delay can be, I'm not saying 5 years, 7 years, delay can be as young as 2 years, 2.5 years. So basically the rule of thumb that we follow when we get a child, so we try to have a no tech, low tech and speech way of communication for the first 1 to 2 months of starting the therapy, and we see how the child responds. If we feel no tech and low tech is not sufficient, we will have to involve a high tech also with the child. We discuss with the parents, and we by the end of 2 months of therapy or something, we start with the high tech also. So as the speech comes, it comes. So but in return, what we get is we don't what we don't get is we don't get a lot of unnecessary behaviors, we don't get a lot of anxiety driven flight or fight mode, and what we get is we get a lot of learning mode in that child, we get a lot of self acceptance in that child. So that way we are able to work on speech ideally sooner. So if the child was supposed to, even if the child had a speech difficulty, we are able to encounter that much sooner if we provide AAC to this child. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Dr. Zainab says, my daughter started to communicate verbally, but using the app may limit her communication verbally. I mean, she's asking. I think we've already addressed it. Would you like to say it briefly? Because we have a lot more questions that we would like to cover.
Right.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
think, like I said, speech is not that easy. That like we as speech therapists, we get asked these set of questions very regularly, right? Like COVID, is COVID going to did it make my child have a speech delay? Excessive screen time made my child have a screen delay. AAC can make my child not get motivated to speak. So for all these three things, my answer is no, because speech is very intrinsically motivating. It is, if it has to happen, it naturally happens. If it has to happen in a specific way, also that is a natural way of happening. And if speech has to happen, it will happen. Using AAC is not going to stop your child from communicating verbally. Rather, like we have been reiterating the fact, it is only going to make your child speak more. That's what we have seen. I have seen clinically, and there are research on that aspect.
True. And also, if the child is able to speak and use AAC, they will opt for speech over AAC because that's the easiest to do. So they will always take the easiest path to communicate.
Yeah, more than it's more, I mean, if it is naturally bound to, again, doing this is also natural, doing this is also natural. What is natural for that particular child, the child will show. So if this is more natural to me, the child will opt for it. Like how we saw in this child, where
yeah, I think we need to cover a few more, lot more questions, Bhargavi, I think. Yeah, sorry to. Yeah, most of the parents will have that my child will communicate like normal. What counseling do you give for parents to accept for AAC? Yeah, this is a very key question. Sorry? Most parents will hope that their child will communicate like normal children, typically developing children. What counseling will you give to parents to accept or opt for AAC? Yeah, that is.
So I would start with asking what is normal, because I still don't know what is normal. And am I normal? So again, that's what I'm saying. So I think it's a mindset shift what I would try to create in these parents, because when you say something as normal, you're basically saying there are certain normative data, and anything which goes away from the normative data, you're calling it abnormal. So now you have a very linear way of looking at it, saying all brains need to be same. Anything same is normal. Anything which is different is abnormal. Now, can we change this to a level where we say that, let's not say that all brains are same, because all brains cannot be same. Even if you call you and me to be normal, then our brains working similarly, like the example what I gave for coffee again. So when we say all brains are different, then we are saying there is a typical way, there can be atypical ways. So this is the atypical pattern what the child is showing, and from there I would want to counsel their child's individualistic profile, like individualistic strengths and challenges. And after that, I would, tell them that this is the challenge, like we said in that earlier child, that these are so many strengths the child is showing. This is one particular challenge. Can we leverage this challenge based on these many strengths? So I think when we give this mindset shift, the parents, again, all parents want to do the right thing for their children. Again, they don't want to, but unknowingly, like even me, it's just that, and that's why counseling comes as an outcome of a lot of self-learning, a lot of things which we'll need to do.
Yeah, right. Juhi says, how do we use Avaz for dual language learning, English and Hindi? So Juhi, you can, in the India version, when you select, there is a folder which has Hindi. You can use that and alternate between folders. That is currently the way by which you can use dual language. Soon we might have a way by which you can switch languages. So, but that is yet to come up. As a bilingual app, as a true bilingual app. But yeah, that is not yet available. But right now you can use different folders with different, one has English, one has Hindi. Vinci says most of the parents will have, yeah, okay, that is already done. Sorry. Bhavika says how to develop picture identification. Second question, if the child has low vision, how do we know whether they are following the pictures or not? third, how should we first teach pictures in hard copy and then shift to AAC, or should we do it simultaneously? Do you want me to repeat?
No, I'll just go by one after the other as I remember. Picture identification, is it for a visually difficult child or typically having a visual development? I'm not sure how to identify picture development. So if it is for a typically a child who is able to process visual information fine, then again, we would do a lot of modeling. We would start with pointing. We would go with hand and eye coordination, and that will all be in play trust-based relationship. If it is a child with poor visual development, then possibly we start with something sensory. We start with presuming competence, like we ask functionally what is it that the child already knows, and from there we take it forward. We presume that this is what he knows, and we do a lot of, again, trial and error is not wrong over there. That's when we'll get into the field area of how much the child can do visually. And once we do that, then we choose what kind of low tech or high tech the child might benefit from. So is it that the child has some and again over here, vision therapists, if they are already working on with vision therapists, then we get an idea of what is the level of the child's visual development. Can the child have a visual figure ground discrimination with a 2D image, or all of these things, or is it only 3D image we should be using? So if they say you have to go ahead only with the 3D objects, then the buttons what we have might help. So this is with how we can introduce AAC for a child with visual impairment. What was the third question?
Should we first teach pictures in hard copy and then shift to AAC, or should we do it simultaneously?
Again, depends on the child's level of performance. So it's not a rule of thumb, but and again, what is it? So it's not about the pictures that I want you to look, it's about the communicative intent the child can do. So if the child is already having a pointing, the child is already used to seeing pictures, then soft copies of the tab would do. If the child is not used to it, the child has other motoric difficulties, then choosing picture book, from picture book to high tech would do. But again, the purpose should not be that the child should show this picture, or the child, when I ask the child should show, this should not be the purpose. The purpose needs to be communication. So if the child wants to communicate, he wants mom, I need to model it in such a way that when he wants mom, I can either take the book and he can show mom, or I can take the tab and he can show mom. So that should be the purpose.
Okay, so we've run out of time. I will just quickly run the poll that you can all answer. And in the meanwhile, for a few minutes, we'll try and wrap up all the questions at the earliest. So Bhargavi, if you can, I'll just read out the questions quickly that are left. I've also launched the poll. How likely are you to recommend this session to others? So if all of you can please give your rating, that will be great. Okay, so in the meanwhile, we'll just go through the other questions that are there. We'll quickly try and cover all of them. If the child uses both gestures and also through pictures, how can it be addressed? Okay. This is from Kirtana.
Address both. Again, if the communicative intent. So I think one of the thing is the emotional awareness what the child is able to have. Like if the child is communicating through both, good enough. And while you do that, if you want to involve speech also, if you feel the child is capable, then a smallest change you can do during therapy or during talking is make sure you are at the eye level of the child and the speech movements are being seen by the child. So that way you're giving a holistic approach to communication. Yeah.
Right. Shivam Kumar says, I'm using AAC for the past 8 months for my daughter, but will directly shift to physical digital gadget. Is it okay, or should I start with physical models first, like showing an apple or mango physically is good, or rather should I show her on AAC?
I want to know why you want to show apple and mango. Like, what is the purpose? Before, I mean, is it that you want your child to learn about fruits, or So I am not able to understand why they want to show the fruits. So is it to teach or is it to model?
I guess to teach the words. Let's
No.
assume that.
To teach the words, I would say if you can, go with the AAC, you can say, okay, I'm eating apple and I cut the mango. So this is what is modeling is. And if you start doing that and as you do the physical activity, you need to parallelly. So that's what I think I tried saying also, right? So as you speak, you model and you do this while doing that activity. I know this is a little difficult for us because we are not used to doing this, but that's exactly the point. If a child who is 3 years, 4 years is struggling to use AAC, we will need to understand that struggle to learn. We'll have to learn the system first. And as we learn, the child learns from us on how to learn. Yeah. So
Yeah. I've used AAC for vocabulary development. She can verbally say the words if I show pictures of AAC app, but she's not using the words in daily situation. How can we make a transition?
again, I'll need to know what is the child's individual strengths and weaknesses, and how are we using AAC. If AAC is used from the mindset of just pointing and just teaching, like how you would use an academic book, then that is how the child would see. If AAC is used from the mindset of communication can happen 24/7, and as I communicate through speaking, I'm going to do pointing, then probably she might do spontaneous pointing. So that spontaneous pointing needs to come from that angle. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Okay, those who haven't completed the poll, please complete it so that we can close the poll. And very briefly, there are a few more questions that we'll try and finish. Can you please suggest, Anima says, suggest a few tips for SLPs and parents on how to start with Avaz and speech therapy session? Okay, I think that is too big a topic to start here.
I think so. Like I mentioned, we start with destigmatizing, or again we start with talking about typical and atypical brains, and we start with the perceptual shift, keeping in mind that all brains need not be same, and that is completely normal. And from there we talk about how driving is a skill, what a husband, what men can learn very easily, but cooking is a skill. Somehow women are very natural learners, but when we have to swap the roles, it's not difficult. And it's the same thing for speech. I think this can be one of the closest analogies we can give to the parents. And just because speech is not there, it doesn't mean they, like, if I don't know how to drive, it's not that I am caged in one particular space. I can still travel using other mediums. So that's how we can introduce AAC to the parents. And from there, usually children themselves will start advocating about their need to the parents. So we don't have to counsel after that, because children will show how happy they are, their behaviors will go down. And then automatically this perceptual shift with this kind of action from the child will get us, the parents, to start liking AAC. Start accepting AAC more.
No, I think she's asking about how to start with Avaz and speech therapy session.
How to start, like what activity we would give.
Yeah, it's a full topic.
Okay, so I think eating is something which can be, so we can go from immediate, somewhere immediate gratification to delayed gratification. So I think eating anything tangible, what the child likes, can be one of the things we can start with. And from there, we can go to pretend play, like how our children, and then from there, we go to spontaneous speech. So yeah.
Malavika says the child will show what form of communication he or she is happy to use. It's our ability to see what he or she knows, accept and encourage it. Yeah, absolutely. That's the strength-based approach that she's talking about. Julezi says, when will we start using AAC for a non-verbal child? Example, a 5-year-old child is having speech therapy for 2 months and not showing improvement. When can we start AAC?
A 5-year child is not showing improvement from speech. Again, from a speech therapist point of view, we have tried 3 months on working with a combination of low tech, no tech with speech, and we see that the child is still showing behaviors, the child is still struggling. Then I think 2 to 3 months is the maximum limit. After that, you have to start introducing AAC to that child and see if, because of using an AAC, I'm not saying the child should speak, but have the parents felt that the stress in their life has reduced, the child's behaviors are more appropriate. So these are the signs you would see after 2 months of using AAC. So 3 months of not using high-tech AAC plus 2 months of using a high-tech AAC and the outcome phenomenon. So this is how I would put it for a speech therapist. It's the same thing for parents also. Like, you go to a therapy center, they say we are working on speech, we're working on speech. So you see for 3 months. Why I would say 3 months is because the first 1 month will mostly go in understanding the child. I mean, getting the child out of that survival mode to learning mode. And the second month is when we would actually try connecting with the child, and trust-based relationship and all of that gets started. So 2 to 3 months is good enough time for you to see a significant progress from speech therapy. That could be a child trying to speak or the child trying to communicate. So either ways, the behavior should come down, the child should become more attentive, the child should attempt to speak or attempt to communicate by the end of second month of therapy. If that happens, then if your clinician says we need to start taking an AAC, then yes, she has given a lot of thought process to it, and then she has come up and said this. So you can go ahead, you can believe that person. And after that, yes, let's see how that goes. So yeah.
Yeah. And last question, Gauri says, what training would you suggest for parents whose child has just started on Avaz?
I think they have,
so that I can use Avaz in our daily life.
I think Avaz has a parental coaching session for all the parents. They can definitely take that. And I have suggested a lot of people who have come from Bangladesh and elsewhere. I've given them Avaz's contact, and they have had good review about that.
Okay, so thank you so much, Bhargavi, and thanks everyone for attending. Yeah, thank you.